My name is Zulaikha Patel. I am a South African anti-racism and social justice activist.
I read that you became a symbol of resistance at just at an age of 13. If you can describe what exactly happened and how did that moment shape your understanding of identity and activism?
That moment happened in sort of towards the end of 2016. I started a movement against institutionalized racism called #Stop Racism at Pretoria Girls High. There was a time when I was in high school and I was facing racist hair policies that prohibited Black learners from wearing our hair naturally as it grows in afros or dreadlocks, as well as language policies that prohibited using African languages to speak. That doesn't mean that post-apartheid, after 1994, racism disappeared. What was then constitutionalized has now been privatized and institutionalized. And you can still see racism in South African society every day. And growing up as a South African who came from an interracial family where my father is Indian from India, he had immigrated to South Africa, and my mother is a Black South African woman, I firsthand got to see racism from my identity not being welcomed or not being understood. From that point on, I then understood that, as Frantz Fanon puts it, every generation has a mission of its own. And the generation of Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela and the many other anti-apartheid activists was one where they had to ensure that they bring political emancipation. But political emancipation doesn't exist without economic emancipation, without mental emancipation. Apartheid can legally be abolished, but people still have to change. And that is the mission my generation has, to continue to contribute to a South Africa that is anti-racist.
And I believe this also came together in the form of your first book, perhaps. So at what age did you write your first book? And as an author and activist, how do you use storytelling to reclaim narratives historically defined by oppression?
So when I was 17, I started penning my first book, which is My Coily Crowny Hair, and published it at 19. It tells the story of a little girl named Lisa Kanya, and she goes on a journey with her mother and her grandmother to fall in love with her afro hair. I wrote my first book in order to bring about a positive representation of the African identity, so that any child of any race sees the African identity portrayed positively. I started to write children's books because I believe that children are the future, and children become what they read and what they consume. And